Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this afternoon's session on how we can take the customer experience involving airport baggage and aircraft to the next level for tomorrow's customers. So on the stage today, I'm pleased to have four distinguished members of the panel. They'll introduce themselves in a second, but my name's Darin. Got Sujata, Kevin, David, and Bob. And I'm going to kick it off by asking them one question about their personal experiences. So the first question that I'm going to ask is if they can share with the group an experience that they've had recently that really left them with it as a great customer experience. So I'll start off with mine. So I'm all about having a very quick experience, very fast. When I go through the airport, even though I've worked there for many, many years, I time myself. Maybe that's my own problem. But I'm always trying to make it through as quickly as possible. So actually, when I traveled here to Dublin, I left Toronto and we're trialing a new way for pre-board screening. And you're allowed to leave everything in your bag, including your laptop. So I just had to simply take my roller bag, place it in the bin, place my cell phone in the bin, walk through with my shoes and belt on, pick up my bag on the opposite side, and I was literally through in 30 seconds. So to me, that allowed me time to get to the lounge, do a bit of prepping for this conference, to be honest, and then get on my flight. So that's my experience. Maybe I'll start with you, Sujata.
Yeah, I'm Sujata Suri. I look after strategy and commercial for the Hamad International Airport at Doha. We are this hub airport for Qatar Airways, and very, very trying and very serious proposition. But you know, one of the things that I found on a PTE panel that I was chairing were two people who came in. They were commercial operators. One was a lounge provider who operates in a lot of airports, and another one was a money exchange who also operates in several airports. And each of them set up their own, had told us that because they were in so many airports, they were going to set up an app which would connect their business across airports and actually create loyalty programs across airports. And I think that to me was very telling because the future of airports, I think, is an interconnectedness, an international interconnectedness between airports. I think we've looked at airports from a local perspective for a very long time. But I think going ahead, there will be serious connections between airports and our businesses. So I think that's what I find interesting for the future.
Very good, thank you. Kevin.
Yeah, so I have the privilege of leading our emerging trends practice at Southwest Airlines. Get to work a lot of great new technologies, new startups and companies, and really find ways to bring those back to the airline. From my perspective, kind of an interesting customer experience happened where I got stuck in an elevator at Frankfurt Airport trying to get from one flight to another. And as we were stuck on that elevator yelling for help because several of us needed to get to our flight, it was great. You know, we talk a lot about self-service and we talk a lot about technology, but this is where the people came into play. It was really great to have somebody there with us to really help us through, get us off the elevator. It was a lot of fun where it's stuck halfway and you have to squirm on out and hope that the thing doesn't start up when you get off. But once we got off, they got us to the gate, they held the flights for us, they called the airline, they worked with the airline to make sure it understood what was happening. So it was a really great experience to know that there's the people aspect, the human aspect, and they were there with me along for the ride to help ensure I got to that flight, knowing they were kind of at fault for what occurred. So it was a great experience with that human element that I'll always remember.
Yeah, the people can really make a difference for sure. Thank you. David.
So my name is David Kondo from Finnair. My background is really around in-flight experience and cabin design. But in my most recent role with Finnair for the last year or so, looking after our airport customer proposition across the Finnair network and our lounges. My most memorable airport experience was also a people experience, and it was in Brussels airport, I believe. And I was going through border control, and the border control agent was really friendly. And that's never happened before in border control, to me at least. Usually you get barked at and all sorts, but it was really pleasant, really smiley, welcoming. And they give every customer or every passenger a Belgian chocolate when they give your passport back. And I thought that was just such a lovely welcome to the country compared to the typical scream you get at is next or whatever it is. And I think also it's again, the people experience, and also I feel like border control is it's the first impression of the country. So.
Yeah, Border Patrol doesn't have to be that the steel wall as you enter a country.
Yeah.
Why not welcome people? Because the majority of people are good people for sure.
Yeah, but as an airline, it's very hard to influence border control as well. So again, kind of the disjointed nature of airports, like we'll talk about later, I'm sure.
Yeah, thank you. Bob.
Yeah, that's great. I'm Bob Quick. I'm the worldwide head of airports for AWS, Amazon Web Services. So my story, it's when I flew to Singapore. And Singapore is one of our Changi airports, one of our major customers. It was really cool to get to fly in for the first time. But it was a long flight in economy, because with Amazon, everyone flies economy. So I landed into Singapore after my long flight, and similar border control experience, but kind of the opposite. There was no chocolates, but it was just all technology. So I had filled in my immigration card electronically online beforehand. And what was really cool is you were really pushed to fill in the immigration card. But if you hadn't done so, there were kiosks there so you could fill it in. There was people there to help. And then the border control was fully automated, so you kind of flew through border control. And it was just so nice not to have to queue, the full self-service experience. And then when I went to pick up my bag, the bag was already there in the belt, and I was out of the airport like within minutes after landing. So it was just a fantastic self-service arrival experience.
Thank you, Bob. So that's sort of the intro for the panel. So today we don't have any slides. It's simply a discussion, so it's really going to be interactive. So I'm going to be asking the panel some questions. We're going to hopefully build on each other's answers, and maybe some contrarian thoughts may come up as well. Those are always great for a panel discussion. And then we also welcome the audience. Ali will be walking around with her microphone, so please don't wait till the end if you have any questions, or even more importantly, comments about things that we may be discussing, or if you want us to delve a bit deeper in it, please raise your hand, and Ali will come around with the microphone. So, for the first question, what does the dream state of airports and/or airlines look like in the future, say by 2030? I'd like to start us off.
I think we should be managing our airports while sitting on a beach with a digital twin, and something out of those Star Wars screens which tells you exactly what's happening where, and automated decision making which needs minimal human intervention. Perhaps a robotic voice that says, listen, I need you to press a button and give you that. I think that's where airports are going.
And that's a good point. We were talking about this before the presentation. The thing that's going to happen in the future, and it's happening already, is as the industry has, for the most part, recovered from COVID, or the numbers are almost there. But in the next 7 years, all that pent-up demand, we're going to see airports that are maybe currently at 20 or 30 million, then go to 50, 50 go to 70, 70 go to 90. And we're going to have more airports that are handling over 100 million passengers a year. And to your point, if you don't have that digital aspect of it, just having operational people who are operating it based on what their gut tells them, it's going to be near impossible.
Because at 40 million, you have a kind of problem. At 50 million passengers, it becomes a 50 million kind of problem. So at that point, you're probably running out of capacity, serious capacity on some very key propositions, like perhaps the airfield or check-in or something like that. So that's when congestion probably builds up, and that's when you need data and you need technology to see you get the throughput in, and you need some discretionary decision-making at that point as well. So yes, to manage an airport that's 40 million is very different to managing something that's 75, and I'm sure by the time 100 million becomes the norm, that'll be a whole different level of data and information requirements altogether.
Maybe I could just share one more thing on the digital twin is, as we were looking at our airport on what a digital twin could do for us, we looked at sort of the video game aspect of it, being able to do some planning with it. And that was great, but one thing we are shifting to, and I'm not sure about Hamad Airport, but really taking that into real time. So giving really the operations people who are running the airport a bird's eye view, like they're looking down at the digital aspect of the airport. And from that, we're seeing AI measuring the turn of gates using software, using predicted data to then show what the lineups are expected to be in the next few hours for security and for border, baggage flow. When we work with our operations team, the more, as we build out these iterative models, they keep on asking for more. They want to see more. They want to see how they're interrelated with each other. So I think digital twins they're going to come in all shapes and sizes, but the operational day of is, to me, very interesting in the short term.
Well, we're using a digital twin for maintenance of buildings and as airfield and infrastructure and assets. So there's way more than just operations that would happen. You'd actually even be able to check and see whether the effective aviation infrastructure and the core infrastructure is in place and working correctly. And again, all of that is going to be extremely important when you become that 75 million or 100 million pax airport, where you have seriously constrained infrastructure. So even something like an escalator going down or the AGL going down would be a huge, huge crisis for you at some point. So I don't think it's just going to be limited to operations. I think there's a lot else that you should be able to do with it. And of course, the people element as well. I'm sure there'll be a lot of training and those kind of advantages that would come out of it.
Yeah, no, I agree with what you said in the digitization, automation. Digital twins are going to do a great job for us in really simulating so we can understand where things are going, where things are heading. It's going to be great, but where I say in the future, it is going to be the automation. You are going to see the new technologies, the AI, the ML, the predictive solutions, but there still needs to be, how do you balance technology with the human aspect as well in the hospitality? And I think that's a huge piece. We can use technology all day long and we can streamline the processes, but there's sometimes where that human interaction is needed, as we as humans need to have that interaction sometimes, and that also helps with culture and building the brand, and people feel comfortable flying with you when you have that kind of relationship. So I definitely think that we're going to see things streamlined. Hopefully we'll get to the Total Recall days from the movie of walking through security, and things will be quick and easy, but I do see humans still continuing to play a major part of that in the future, and we just have to figure out how do we work with people and technology, how do we blend that together, and we don't need to be coming in and saying technology is going to take over your job. That's not the case. Technology is going to be there to help, and we need the people to, I think, also support that.
And Bob, maybe anything you can share from Amazon. You're obviously a supplier to airports, but also a huge company, I'll be honest. With lots of automation. Anything you can share from Amazon's experience with technology and the people aspect of it?
Yeah, I guess building on what you say, I think the sort of 2030 nirvana is operationally full situational awareness. So whatever your role is in the airport, you understand fully what's going on, plus a little bit of forecasting and prediction, so you know it's coming down in the future, and then things like digital twins to allow for decision support and do what-if scenarios if there's a disruption. But then looking at the passenger side, I think passengers also need that full situational awareness. So you walk into the airport and you know how long the lines are going to be for the various security checkpoints. You know how long the journey is going to take. You know where everything is. If there's a delay or disruption, you also have full visibility into the delay, a forecasted resolution time, and then information on how to deal with it. So it's giving the full awareness not just to the organization, to the operator of the airport, but also to the traveling public, to us going to the airport. And indeed, not just in the airport itself, but also on your journey to and from the airport. So when you're at home planning your trip that day to the airport, you've got full situational awareness, let's say, of the entire journey with forecasting of all the different touch points along the way.
And does the panel think that we can maybe not eliminate, but significantly reduce the uncertainty and the stress that comes with travel? Maybe even those of us that are, I'll call us professional travelers in the industry, we still, I wouldn't say have anxiety for travel, but I am thinking, will I get there? How much time should I get there in advance? What time should I be there? Will it be busy through security? Those type of things. I'm interested to hear some thoughts on how we could either reduce that, or things you're already doing, or will we eventually be able to eliminate it? Does the same thing happen when you go to take a train, as an example? A lot less, I would think.
I think the dream state for me in 2030 is that you can, the airport is almost a non-event, that you walk through it. But I think, every airport is kind of different. So, to your point about customer anxiety, it's like maybe it works for some airports that are able to do that, but then obviously not everyone's going to get there at the same point. So.
In answer to Darin on that, we actually did a trial and a test several years ago where we provided all that information to the customer. It was, what does traffic look like? How long is it going to take to get from your destination to the airport? How many parking spots are available for you to get a parking spot? How long is the security line going to take? So we could kind of look at that information and basically say from the time you get home to the time you need to be in line to board, it's going to take you 45 minutes, and so you need to plan accordingly. Great feedback, awesome feedback. People loved it, especially those that like to just kind of do in-time boarding. They just want to get there and get right on the plane. But I think it helped on the stress level because we were using technology to give them all the information. It was contextually relevant at the time they needed it. And I think taking that with some of the things Bob mentioned, it should help reduce those stress levels and make people feel a bit more comfortable when they get to the airport, and instead of kind of some of the craziness and stress we see when people walk through those doors.
It's almost like everyone needs an airport buddy walking with them, so to speak.
But, I think the airport experience will always be somewhat unpredictable. I don't think we can plan for no disturbances and disruptions. But I think if technology can be leveraged to provide the solutions as well, which is to say, it's that long into security. If you're traveling on this flight, and you are going to probably miss it, so this is what you need to do to be able to make it happen. So I think that would perhaps be the next step. We're going to have to live with unpredictability of the airport proposition itself. But I think our way of being able to provide solutions and do some risk mitigation is probably the next step ahead.
And when it comes to that, there's if you think if you're someone who's traveling in the world, or even just someone traveling who doesn't do it frequently, any thoughts on how it could happen? Does the relationship always have to be with the airline that I purchased a ticket from? Can it be something that is more generic, something that we all use in our day-to-day life to then navigate or travel or connect through airports? Nothing that I've personally seen. If you guys had any experience with that or thoughts on how that could work for almost any country in the world, so we get a bit more standardization throughout the industry?
Yeah, I think my experience being in airports for the last year or so, like what struck me so much is how disjointed the whole sort of ecosystem is. I think with in-flight experience, for example, you kind of have very clear and direct control over what happens in that cabin space. But in the airport space, it's kind of like the Wild West because there's just so many different stakeholders that you imagine it. And with, with apps and onboarding your own customers, you can do that with, your frequent flyers and your customers that fly with you, your airline. But a lot of the customers that fly with us maybe once or twice, they're not onboarded into our systems at all. So I think airports in general, we kind of need to think more holistically and kind of work together to come up with sort of more common platforms that can be leveraged across the industry, rather than kind of just focusing on siloed approach like we do now.
Mm-hmm. But, I think part of the problem with that lack of digital engagement with travelers is they aren't getting the information that they necessarily need or want. So I think if you could provide a richer digital experience for travelers, then they'd be more inclined to opt into whether it's the airport app or the airlines app or just SMS or WhatsApp messaging. But I think there needs to be that richness of information and also the reliability of information as well. I was using an airport app, and the reliability was absolutely perfect for the hub airline, but it wasn't so great for a different airline that was operating at the same airport. So I'm not 100% confident in the information, so I'm not going to 100% rely on it. And I think you do need to have that quality of information that you can share with people before they'll really opt in and then start relying on that data and not check their phone, but then also check the fit screen just to make sure the phone is right.
That is true. I get both, and then I do check. It's a natural double check.
Which is crazy, really, right? Yeah.
And then most people will walk to the gate just to make sure it is there. Yes, I do see the city, and then go do things.
Yes. Yeah.
So on that, we were speaking earlier too in Hamad Airport. Your group runs everything from the airline to the airport to the catering, and you were also sharing with me that in doing that, the airport and airline operated throughout COVID, ran the World Cup, and won the best airport in the world. So I would assume I'm a bit envious. I'll be honest. If I could control all of those aspects of my airport. This definitely has its benefits. Maybe you can share some experiences with that.
Absolutely. It's great to have the same objective across the entire ecosystem, because I can see the ground handler wanting to do something different, to the retailer, to the airline itself and the airport. So yes, the ecosystems, it helps to be integrated. It helps to have the same objective for experience across the entire airport. It also helps in crowdfunding any important investment that you need, because everybody owns a part of it. But most importantly, it also helps in having data integration. And so different elements don't really own different parts of the same data for the same customer. But it's good to be able to then have a 100% view end-to-end of what your passenger or your guest is doing, what their preferences are, and potentially what else you could do to drive loyalty. But truly, that's the ultimate space to be in. And I know I'll probably come in conflict with the airlines here, but I do believe the airport is best positioned as an integrator of all the propositions to own that data and then be able to leverage off it in terms of what an experience should be curated as. But I don't know if you have a different view on that.
I don't. I agree, but don't agree.
Too much work.
Yeah, that's right. It's a lot of work. I agree that we do need to have that data, and we do need to share the data. Who owns the data? That's still a fun debate that we constantly have between airports and airlines today, and I think it's a silly debate. I think we should be sharing data. I think that there's been the debate of, well, this is my customer. No, it's my customer. The airline, especially Southwest, we don't sell our fares out in a lot of places, and we ask them to come to southwest.com so we can manage that relationship and we can continue to provide the level of hospitality we want with our customers. But once they get to the airport, it's kind of lost at that point. The airport doesn't know who's coming in, who they are, what they're about, and I think that we as an airline should be taking some of that information and sharing that, so the airport understands who they have coming into the airport and can, I would say cater to them, but can provide them with the services that they need. I feel like we own the customer because we brought them in and they're flying on Southwest, but the airport is hosting them. It's kind of how I look at it, and if they're going to be that host, why not share that data so the host can provide the same experience that we would expect from our employees and to our customers.
Yeah, there is a bit of a handoff. As you said, you sell to the passengers, they buy the tickets, then they come to the airport. Then, as an example, they come through our front door, which we have to make sure is, in a good condition and gives that experience that the airlines want. And then on the check-in side, the bag's given to the airport, they move it through their systems. Now I know that airlines do own some systems too in parts of the US and the Middle East. However, there is that sort of handshake, well, we're with you, you give us the bag, we run it through our system and give it back. We have been doing that for the last few years, is giving that information back to our airline customers to tell them where the bag is in the system, how many bags have come out, to really try to help that handshake back and forth, because if one of us stumbles, then there's a good chance of either the passenger or the bag's not going to get on the plane.
Yeah. I was on a flight recently, and it was a chaotic airport experience. The airport was being sort of going under construction, and I finally got on the plane, and it was just so nice to get on the flight. It was fairly quiet, and I just got on the plane, just nice and relaxed. This is just great. And it dawned on me, the airlines have it so easy. All they have to do is sell the ticket and fly the plane, and everyone else in the airport does everything else for them. They do the ground handling, they do the catering, the refueling, the airport check-in, etc. So, really all you have to do is fly the plane, right?
Yes, that's all we do. We just fly the plane. So I think that's true in a lot of airports and internationally, but that's where we differ a little bit. The entire ground crew is our own employees.
Okay.
So everything that is done around our aircraft are done by Southwest and our employees. Now, some international destinations, we're kind of required to follow some of the rules there, but so we have that responsibility, and that way we can, to your point, kind of holistically own a lot of that. But yeah, you're right. Most are kind of split up, but we try to own that relationship across.
So for Finnair, David, all you have to do is fly the plane, right?
That's all we do. Yeah. I think, like Finnair and Finavia, our home hub, we have a really good relationship, and there is, to some extent, some data sharing, not kind of all the sensitive stuff, and it's not in super granular level of detail, but I think we're quite aligned as two organizations, just because, nature of a hub airport, it's just such a symbiotic relationship. So I think there's a lot of opportunities in that space. I think the challenge comes with outstations. So with Finnair, we have no staff in any of our ports outside of Helsinki, basically. So some of the network stations can be challenging, let's say.
So we need each other, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And Bob, from the data aspect, so as we start talking about sharing data and how quickly some of that has to happen, obviously you're from AWS, so is the technology keeping up with some of the demands? If we need to make decisions quickly, share information quickly around the world, it may sound easy, but is it really that easy when it comes to data sharing? If once we open up the ability to do it and say yes, we will.
Yeah, I mean, people often think, oh, sharing data between all the airports and all the airlines is this massively complex problem, and where do we begin? And within Amazon and AWS, we try very much to focus on the singular customer outcome or the customer experience. And we had this example recently in Manchester Airport, where the flight information display in the gate area would display the departure gate for the flight in the communal area, but it wouldn't display or wouldn't give a real-time update on the Ryanair app. So the Ryanair app departure gate was slightly different sometimes to the gate display. So we talked to Ryanair, talked to Manchester, how could we help with this? And within, I think it was 2.5 months, we had set up a data sharing between Manchester Airport's Airport Operational Database and the Ryanair mobile app, sharing that one data field. It's one piece of information. But it had a massive impact on the passenger experience. Imagine having your mobile app with the wrong gate versus the correct gate. It's a huge impact on the experience and a relatively simple problem to solve. And I think that's really our approach and philosophy on data sharing is figure out what the problem is you're trying to solve, ideally from the passenger or end user experience, and then work backwards and solve for that particular problem without worrying about how to solve the sort of universe of problems up front.
But I think it all goes back to who really owns the experience. Because right now it's between airline, airport, perhaps the retailer, and a whole lot of others. So I guess it's important to probably understand where the industry is going on that and where the thinking is going on that. Because I mean, commercially, it would look as though you'd want to go to the person the element that makes the most money. But I think, to your point, there's more to it, and there's probably a human factor as well, which kicks in at some point. But what are your thoughts on who owns the experience?
Yeah, I'm all about a shared experience, that we as an airport need to share the information. We need to know who's coming through our facilities, at what time, and then we need to prepare. We need to be prepared for that. Things change. We get it. The way that there's delays due to weather, to winds. There's many uncontrollable factors that go in with moving planes through the air and millions of people in bags. And so, yeah, as our airport is concerned, we do not want. Would we like the passenger information? No, not really. Sure, everyone talks commercially. I think someone had mentioned another session. Data is oil. We're not, as an airport, looking to sell people's personal data. That has no interest in what we do. What I do really want to know personally, from an airport perspective, is change the name to numbers and just tell me, give everyone a pseudo ID and what piece of what flight are they on and where there are people in their bags, and then from there the airport can make their best plan to then get them through. Again, we don't control all the facets of immigration and customs and security. However, in the past we haven't been the best at giving them what's coming. I always use the restaurant analogy. So if we all went out to dinner tonight and we all showed up at different times for a reservation, we're not going to be upset because we knew we weren't there on time. The kitchen wasn't ready, to have tables. But it seems like in aviation, we all expect, well, I'm here, so be ready for me. And I'm not saying, we're obviously much more complicated than a restaurant. However, the more data that we share on who's coming and going in the bags and where they're going, then that's what's going to make the system better. And until we do that, even better than we do today, then because we could have the best experience, in my opinion, you could have the people side, Kevin, I 100% agree. But at the end of the day, if you've had the nicest people, but you're an hour or two late for getting there, are you going to be happy? Yeah. Probably not. So I think in our industry, people use us to get places. Great industry. But now we need to then help them by helping each other and predict what is happening. And if you look at, I'll say lastly, if you look at what happened last summer in our industry, it was a rough summer. And everyone's ready for a much better summer this year. But in doing that, if you rewind what happened, there was lots of signs that we saw it coming. Did we react as an industry? I would say we did a fair job. So many of us, and our airport in particular, are really preparing for that. And that involves obviously working with the airlines and the agencies to say, okay, here's what you can expect to happen. And things will change. And when they change, we'll have plans to deal with them together. Because when everyone tries to do it separately, you end up with what you end up with. So.
Yeah, there's nothing like a good crisis to bring about a change. I know that we went touchless and all our contactless stuff just took a different space of its own when COVID happened. And suddenly everything went contactless, and those biometrics and all of that, which we'd been sort of pussyfooting around on, just suddenly turned up as an essential for the airport. I don't know if that's been your experience as well.
I think for COVID, for us, our touch actually went way up and through the roof, just because of all the document checks and stuff that was required. So, a lot of customers that would go for a kiosk or self-serve option, they just couldn't get through because there's so many points in the process you get kicked out. So kind of hopefully we're moving on from there and we're kind of back onto our automation track, but yeah.
But Darin, to your point, we were talking what we experienced over the summer with some of the digital twin capability and some other things that are happening, and we can start to simulate and we can start to understand. But also if we can start to get ahead of this and technology can do a better job of helping us better understand what we may be expecting, say, in the next few days, I think that is valuable information that you can then share that data with the airport. And so the airport can also be prepared knowing, hey, I may have 3 times the amount of people now because of cancellations or other issues due to weather. So I think there's a lot we can use this technology for to help simulate, get ahead of things, predict, work with the airport, share that information. That way they can plan and prepare, whether it's their vendors, make sure there's enough food, make sure there's enough people to support. So I think we as an airline can help in that instance, and then hopefully the airport can very quickly scale to support some of that. So we don't experience some of the situations that we did over the past 6 months or so.
I think it's also an enabler of tackling some of the resource challenges, not only in disruption state, but in steady state as well. Like there's a lot of challenge in getting resource to airport these days. Like after COVID, everyone kind of left the industry and they really haven't come back because they realized there's a whole nother world out there. So I think technology is a key enabler of that as well.
I get the sense with airport operators that there's a view that now that all the staff have left, we can kind of replace the staff with self-service technology and end up with more self-service and less staff at the end of the pandemic, or as we come out of and go back to full recovery. But that does leave the issue of Kevin's human touch when things go wrong. That self-service is great, but then if there's a delay or disruption, then how do you deal with that? Now, I do think that can also be dealt with remote technology, with contact centers, etc. You still don't need to have people physically in the airport, or certainly as many. But I think that's the next step, is that when things go wrong and there are those delays and disruptions, which you will always have, they're kind of unavoidable. How can you make that be seamless and self-service as far as possible?
Yeah. And maybe I'll shift gears a bit then. We've been talking a lot about sort of I would call it the table stakes, which does make sense as we get to the dream state, but maybe I'll focus on 2 things. Maybe we'll move into the airline side as well as maybe we'll just do baggage before we leave that, given the role that I play, and Kevin, we are on the Baggage Innovation Working Group, so we have to talk a bit about baggage. So anything you see, Kevin, on the baggage side as far as the dream state in the future?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a lot from the conversations we've had within the Baggage Innovation Working Group. In the future of bags right now, it's several things. One, it goes back to the data, just collecting more data, right, and understanding where bags are within the process, and making sure that information is then shared with the right people at the right time. I think we collect a ton of data, but I don't think we do a good job of sharing that with either the passenger or with the right people that need to know it. So I think there's the data side, but from the technology aspect of it, we've had conversations around is there a world we can live in where we don't need bag tags anymore? I think with the way AI is going, I think with the technology there, there are possibilities that you might be able to look at a bag's biometrics similar to a face, and potentially that could be the wave of the future. I think some of the things you've also seen with even electronic bag tags and the way those are helping when it comes to tracking and data, I think there's some possibilities there too. So I think it's just like the customer experience, the baggage experience should be seamless, frictionless, easy, and that data should be shared appropriately and across the right groups. I don't know if you agree to that or any other thoughts on the bag side.
No, we're obviously together on a lot of these things, and I think for sure, if you think how we used to have paper tickets, then we had, just boarding cards, and now everything's on our phone or app, yet we still put a paper tag in a circle that now we're asking many passengers to do themselves. Is that the way to keep on going? Probably not. I think too that you'll see technology change quickly. So whether or not it's not just the passenger information back, when I ship a package by Purelator or I get an Amazon package, I always assume it's going to be there. I never question whether or not it's going to come. And then when it doesn't, usually there's ways to get that, to make it right, so to speak. And I think the airlines are there's a whole bunch of thoughts out there that are going to start coming and being proactive. So when a disruption happens, and again, they will happen, that how is the airline then making sure that me as a passenger in this role, how you can sort of take a bad situation and make it not so bad. And I think that stuff's coming, and whether or not that's more information, data sharing where the bag is in the airport, images, there's a whole bunch of things that are coming that way, and it's really going to pick up speed rather quickly.
Yeah, and with the data sharing and working with AWS in the cloud environment and the way we can bring that data together, if there is an issue where we can't get the bag to them, let them self-serve. Let be honest, tell them what's happened, and let them self-serve and kind of go through the process to hopefully connect back with that bag at some point in time. Heck, we've talked about it. Is there an opportunity to use things like AirTags and connect those back to the airline and let somebody share their Apple AirTag information with Southwest and says, hey, I give you permission to use this for the next 30 minutes or next 2 days, so you can actually go and help me find that bag, and just leverage some of that technology today. Apple already does it today with the Find My, if you lose your iPhone or you lose your iPad, or you can go back and quickly find it. Same with the AirTags, the way they tag things. So the infrastructure is there. There might be opportunities to leverage that, share that back with the airline or the airport, and now you have an opportunity to maybe go help find their bag where you might not have the data information exactly where it might be parked in a corner of a room somewhere.
Yeah, and AirTag's another great example. There's all the challenges that we've been speaking about, but it's, again, a technology that is used everywhere. It works around the world. So I think that's, to me, my mind always comes back to that. Whatever we're doing in our industry, that we need something that everyone's used to using, and that it does act the same way. I'm not saying the AirTag is perfect, but it is a step, and it's one of those, I think, a step, and the future will be something different, always. But I think that is definitely a step getting there. What about from the airline side? So in-flight, we haven't talked too much about that. David, anything you've been sort of focused on that in your past? Anything that you see as a dream state, going forward?
Dream state for
the airline,
baggage or for
the in-flight experience?
Oh, the
We'll switch to in-flight.
Lots of things. Yeah, nothing rings off the top of my head now. I think it's interesting to see how in-flight has kind of, there's been a lot of innovation, a lot of product improvement, particularly in the last sort of few years or last decade. We've seen like business class kind of become like first class, and premium economies going gangbusters and kind of continuously improving. But when I look at the airport space, I don't know that it's kept up as much. So in terms of the baggage piece that we were just talking about before, I mean, from a customer experience perspective, it seems really overly complicated, the whole system at the moment. And like as a customer, I just want it to work, right? Like the vast majority of customers out there probably don't even really think about or care about baggage. They just want to know that it's going to be there when they get to their destination. And it's also in the airline's interest, right? Because it's hideously expensive when you get a disrupted bag. I mean, we spend millions on it every year. And we're often flying customers' bags on other airlines because they need to get it there faster than our next flight. So
Yeah, that has a cost and really an environmental impact too if we're moving bags twice that we don't need to.
yeah.
Yeah,
You know, I do think the solution is kind of multifold. You know, it's like how nice it would be to go to an airport and not have to tag a bag. That just would be a great experience. You just put the bag straight on the belt. But it would be even better if your bag made it on time when you got to the destination. I think that's the biggest pain point. So the tag is a hassle, but it's a way bigger hassle not getting your bag when you get to your destination. So I think both need to be solved, like the transfer and the connecting of the bag. And then also, you know, situational awareness for the passenger. Like, where is my bag? Like, that data completely exists in the industry now, but it still isn't being shared with passengers. And even like we were talking about it during the break, you know, if there's a delay with your bag, rather than standing at the baggage belt for 30 minutes, why not get a message saying your bag is delayed, it'll be coming out in 30 minutes, and then you can go get a coffee, you can get some ancillary revenue, and you still get a slightly better experience just by sharing a little bit of information and a little bit of forecasted data. You can make that kind of step change, perhaps, in the experience.
Maybe if I could throw out an idea, that, and anyone in the room is welcome to take this and market it, and I will take no royalties. But is there, please, can someone figure out a way that when everyone's boarding and the stress of a carry-on bag space, that, you know, we're talking the last few evenings about, I've literally seen people throw bags. I've heard stories of people getting in fights about them. That's my overhead bin space because my seat is here. Is there any way from an aircraft manufacturer that when I sit down, I've got a little hatch at my feet, and I'm in 27K, and my bag fits in the sizer, and I open the hatch, drop my bag down, and put my feet down, and then no one's going to, this is my space? No?
Maybe, you never know. It begs the question, though, it's overhead bins continue to get bigger and bigger versus trying to find maybe other ways to handle carry-on bags. And I think we have to kind of figure out what that looks like, because I think bags is one of the biggest reasons you see slow turn, is everybody's trying to figure out where their luggage is going to go. If they don't have a spot, you got to take the bag all the way into the aircraft, and you got to get off. And so that'll be an interesting one to solve for, I think, on in the in-flight experience as we look towards the future. Is it a bagless cabin, and there's a better way to do it? I don't know, but all right now you just continue to see bins get bigger versus trying to think the other way about it.
Yeah, good.
Well, I was going to say, we have been looking at using computer vision to try and help solve that problem. So if you could imagine you've got, you know, so many passengers, you know, 180 passengers on a plane, if you could count how many carry-on bags they have and what the volume of those bags are, you could then work out will they all fit in the overhead bin or under the seat. And if you knew you had too many, then you could proactively reduce the number of carry-on bags so they'll all fit in the aircraft.
Yeah.
So I think that's the kind of silver bullet there. If you knew for certain how many bags you had for all of your passengers, then you could be a bit more proactive and get the right number of bags checked in advance.
Yeah, and we're it's funny you say that, and we're talking about it tomorrow. But when my colleagues and I are talking about it tomorrow, we're doing that today. We just started testing and trialing it. We're looking at how many carry-on bags and personal bags are going onto the aircraft. And so the model's gotten pretty darn good that it's able to identify a personal bag is going to be the bag that goes in the seat in front of you, whereas a carry-on bag is going to go in the overhead bin. So once you get to a certain point when you recognize how many carry-on bags you can handle in an aircraft, at Southwest we can say, hey, we need to, at this point in time on boarding, bags need to be gate checked out front and ahead of time, so that way we don't have to worry about some of that. So we're testing some of that right now, actually, and some of the preliminary results look really good at being able to identify that and starting to share that kind of real-time information for real-time decision making.
That's great.
Yeah.
I think like the newer generation of aircraft, you know, the bins are getting bigger, and there is like space for every bag for every passenger on board. But it'll take a while for that new generation to kind of feed through the system. I think the other part of the tackling the problem is, you know, these days people are just bringing on way too much carry-on baggage. Like they're trying to bring on suitcases and stuff. So we've actually started clamping down on it at Finnair. We introduced new baggage monitoring processes, and we thought we would, you know, get hate mail and customers, and we have to some extent. But what's also been really interesting is positive customer feedback, that they actually appreciate the monitoring of cabin baggage, because even the customers realize that it's kind of gotten out of hand, and it does really affect turn time. So, you know, hopefully we get OTP up.
Yeah, for sure. And Kevin, I think too, when you go back to the information for people, if your even in the lounge and you've got a high boarding number, in your case in Southwest, or a high zone, I think there's also that anxiety, well, am I going to get it on, or do I put my bag in? And if there was AI, like you said, that is monitoring the flow of the roller bags going in, as an example, there could be some sort of information back to the people that lets you know, yes, we can hold X, and it's now going down, and okay, it's getting too tight for me, I'll check my bag. Again, just take the anxiety left, get the bag tagged, and then boarding is faster and get the flights out on time.
Yeah, and not necessarily do it, you don't have to do the jet bridge, right? I know there's a lot of noise and there's a lot of traffic within the gate area itself, but can you start to do it there and get a sense for the number of bags so you can kind of get ahead of it? And, we always talk about it. We can fly an aircraft, but we still write a handwritten bag tag that we strap on when we have to gate check it. There's other ways that you can get ahead of that. And if you can identify who needs to gate check, why not just have a very easy machine right there? I think there might be some that you've seen out there with companies like Airware and others that you could just tap or scan a QR code, get the bag tag, and it's very quick and easy. And that way, the bags can be set down and the flight attendants in flight can focus more on their job versus having to wrestle bags throughout the flight, which hopefully would then improve the turn times.
All right, well, I see we have just about 10 minutes left. Any questions or comments from the audience? Yes, Jessica.
Shout.
Salon, hi. Jessica from Copenhagen Optimization. So first a comment and then a question. First comment, I agree with you, Darin, on the overhead luggage stuff. My stress level goes through the roof when I only have my checked luggage, my carry-on, and the woman goes on the microphone and says, we're about to board our flight, it's going to be a full flight, we might have to put some of the carry-on luggage down in the cargo. I'm like, oh no, I'm in boarding group 5, they're going to take my bag. Yes. So first of all, that's my annoyance. Second, my question is, we're talking about tomorrow's customer. Tomorrow's customer is going to be someone that's over 70 years old, because the majority of the population is going to be an aging population. How are we going to prepare for that? Because more wheelchairs, queuing is going to be an issue. At a certain point, it's going to be an issue when you need to find your flight on a huge index of other flights. How are we going to prepare for that?
Very good question.
Go.
It's a good problem. It is a problem at this point in time, and we completely accept that. And know that at this point, I really can't see anything other than the special handling process, which to me seems to be the only way out, which is that we identify them a lot earlier and perhaps ensure that they are assisted through, because that's what they need. I'm not sure if they're going to be in a position to be independently handled through. So I think, again, that will probably go back to a customer experience and a people solution as opposed to a technology solution. But I'm open for, for any other suggestion.
Yeah, but I have a view on that. It's more my own view. But I think a lot of the challenges people have going through an airport is just wayfinding, finding a way through the airport. Even myself, if I'm traveling with the kids, they're consuming 90% of my mental capacity, and I get lost. I don't know where to go. And then for elderly, it's probably worse. And I know for sure that people choose the PRM option for a wheelchair for wayfinding to make that journey easier. And I think there's a huge opportunity for us to have much, much better, more immersive wayfinding, where you're not looking at a screen, maybe a location-aware voice guidance that will work multi-generational, with multilingual, etc. And I think that would solve a lot of the problem. It would reduce the PRM workload to people who actually really do need it, or maybe for a shortened period of their time. And then make a better experience. And I know there's that view of you don't want everyone looking at their phones, but there are other ways, I think, to provide location awareness.
Yeah. I think I'd just add one thing to that, too. I think that I'd be very encouraged to see airports, if their volunteer programs will become larger. We do have a very large one in Toronto, and it's amazing. At first, we didn't think we'd get many volunteers. And people would say, oh, they're not going to show up when it snows and snowstorms. It's quite the opposite. They are the most dedicated people. So as we get aging population, perhaps those that are in the aviation industry might want to volunteer to keep connected with where they spent their careers, and maybe come back and be that person that sort of helps people, whether or not it's mobility or it's simply just wayfinding and the confidence to move through. So I think there's a huge element to that part, because technology, unfortunately, may not be their forte.
So we all know where Darin will be when he's 90. He'll be
Yeah, I think that's what we're talking about.
volunteering in Toronto
He's
Airport.
worried, what will I do in a few years? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. I think we had a couple of questions.
Hello, many thanks to the panel for this interesting discussion. What is your personal feeling about using biometrics for the user journey and the tomorrow user journey, not only for border control, but also to provide more personal services or many facilities, speed up process for any case. But what is your feeling about biometric usage in the respect also of the GDPR compliance in Europe, that it's quite different from other countries? Thank you.
Yeah, I think for me, I think biometrics is a really interesting space, and I think we'll get there eventually. But I think the biggest kind of stumbling or hurdling, stumble at the moment is really to your point around everyone seems to kind of be going a different path around it. There's no common industry standard to it. Everyone's kind of, the US is doing their thing, and bits of Europe are doing their thing, and airlines are doing their thing. So I think that's one example of an area where we need to come together as industry to kind of think how we actually execute this.
Yeah.
And building on that one, I think the GDPR issues will be sorted out only after the industry comes together, because there's a bit of how much information is good to give. And is biometric going to be the only identifier of a human or a person, or are there other ways of doing it as well? Like collecting past information or something like that. But I think the industry, you're right, has to come together to build up a standard.
Yeah, especially because in the U.S. you've got digital ID that's coming. Hopefully I don't have to carry a driver's license in my pocket all the time, but now you have the digital identity that would live within your wallet or on your phone. And some of that is today we're always using biometrics on our phone to unlock our phone. And if our digital identity is stored in there, I think there are ways that we can use that to share our information and do so securely. That doesn't require biometrics at every single point of the journey to be scanning somebody's face. So I think we're going to get there at some point, but I agree that there needs to be a standard that's set across because the U.S. is going to have digital IDs, Europe's going to have their own thing, who knows who else is going to have theirs, and we got to figure out how to solve that holistically is I think those fun cards we all carry around are going to go away, and your life will be on that phone, so kind of how do we manage through that?
And I would add one more thing that when it comes to crossing borders, then yes, biometrics are much more acceptable. That's what you need for security of borders. When it comes to moving through the airport, I know there are other ways of identifying people. Instead of having to scan boarding cards constantly, there's other pieces of your body that you could potentially use your hand to then gain access to places. And then I think a lot of that privacy, there's still a bit of it there, don't get me wrong, but you can't identify someone as much by their hand as opposed to their face. So I think there's going to be different ways, in my opinion, in the future going forward. I think you guys do that with your stores, don't you?
Right. We have the Amazon One technology that reads your palm. But what we're finding is that if people find the notion of like going through border control, you're used to a guard looking at your passport, so you don't mind having your facial biometrics read. But to buy something in a store, it can feel kind of intrusive, or to enter a lounge, you can feel a bit intrusive using facial biometrics. So the palm-based biometrics is as reliable, but it feels much less intrusive. So it could well be a combination of those. But I think the technology is there. It really is a matter of I think this does need to be a bit more experimentation and iteration, and companies and organizations are. And eventually, hopefully, we'll coalesce on one or two ways of doing it that will just magically start rolling out across the industry.
Yeah.
Hello, Matt Sensky, Fission Technologies. Going back to overhead bin space and carry-on bags, isn't that an issue created by airlines themselves by allowing passengers to carry on all that baggage? Why, instead of going to larger and larger overhead bin space, do we not shrink that or overall eliminate carry-on baggage? Spend money instead on the check-in process, as Bob, you mentioned. Hey, can it be easy so I can just go and drop my bag and not have to worry about it? As a customer, then that process becomes simpler, expedites everything at airports, whether that's security lines, turn times as far as loading and deplaning, if you force all of that luggage down to the aircraft. But in my opinion, it comes down to customer confidence. Right now, customers don't have confidence that they're not going to wait at baggage claim. So me as a business traveler, I'm not checking my bag because I don't want to go wait half hour, whatever it may be at baggage claim. I'm trying to get out of the airport as soon as possible. So why, say as an airline, aren't you pushing money towards those things, the check-in process and getting bags to baggage claim, instead of saying, hey, we're going to put more money into new overhead bins, or whatever it may be in the process of Finnair having to limit airlines having bags. So just more discussion around that.
Yeah, I think good question. So we at Southwest, we're unique. We allow 2 bags to fly free on Southwest. So you can have 2 bags fly free, and you can check those 2 bags, and we're not going to charge you. So we've tried to push that to get more people to check bags. But people continue to bring their carry-on luggage with them. And I think you're right, it has to do with the confidence and the trust right now. I think what happened over the winter with a lot of folks and over the summer, we've lost some of that confidence and trust. And I think we're slowly building that back. I think we're doing a really good job with the tools and technology the industry is putting in place and ways to do a better job communicating. But I think we're going to have to get over that hurdle before you start to see more people check that bag again. But agree that, and why we offer 2 free bags. Like, we want people to check those bags. We don't want them to bring them on. But then at the same time, we also increase the size of our bins on some of our aircraft because we recognize people, you've got business travelers and others who want to carry their bag with them. And so you have to cater to, I think, both the leisure, the business travelers, those that want to be with their belongings. You've got people that have, valuables, that have their respirators, everything else that they want to have and carry with them. So we have to be mindful of that as well as we go through it. But I think there are some opportunities for us to figure out how we can better manage that and improve it.
All right, well, I think we've come to the end of our hour, so I want to thank the panel for all of their insights. As I reflect back on the title and how can we take it to the next level, I think what sort of came through loud and clear from this group, and I think a lot of the industry, is that in order to even to take it to the next level, we need to also build up our table stakes, what it is that we do well. And we got a bit of work to do on that, but I think working together to get that done is what's critical, and I think there's that common theme amongst the industry, having gone through, as they say, never let a good crisis go to waste. I think now is ripe, and I'm encouraged on what's going to happen in the future. So all the people that are here at these conferences are here to make this better and really to form a better experience in the future. So I thank everybody. Now coffee for everybody until 4:30 till it resumes again. Thank you.